Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Buffnagel the podcast, where we explore entertaining and enlightening discussions of the adventure of life and all things good. From science and technology to history and philosophy to leadership and success. We hope to give you a better understanding of the world and skills for everyone to pursue their own adventure. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Buffnagel the podcast, where we talk about all things good in the pursuit of the adventure of life. I'm Zach, and we got a fantastic show today, where we're going to reconvene with our heroes in the 1776 and so colonies of America. But I can't really do that without a co-hero. So, as always, I'm joined by Rafe. Rafe, how are you doing today?
Zach, I'm feeling heroic after that little intro. I am fantastic. It is a great day to be doing a podcast with you, as we all know. Hey, thanks, listeners. Thanks for coming. Glad you're here. If you need to contact us, tell us to do whatever you think we should do. Give us a hoot over at buffnagel@buffnagel.com. We're all over the internet. Zach, we are like everywhere on the internet. Like we're just like everywhere. I was like going through. I was at the gas station the other day getting myself a drink and like a Slurpee and a thing of Twizzlers or something like that. And I walked past that rack that has the hot dogs rolling back and forth. And, it said like hot dogs with cheese, bratwurst, smoked sausage. And one said Buffnagel dogs sold out. All right. We are everywhere, Zach. It is, we are a global, international, super duper intergalactic brand. Hey, if you are new to the podcast, welcome. Thanks for coming. Hey, give us 4 episodes. All right, we'll leave that in. We'll give you a reason to come back for more. We're talking about lots of different things, and surely there'll be something that resonates with you. Hey, remember to subscribe and give us a 5-star review because, hey, if we can get a 5-star review, everybody can. All right, Zach.
Wow, okay, so the train was going down the rails, and then you just decided we're going to go off-roading into the ocean, through the channel, and out through
here we are,
Albania or something like that.
That stays in. I think that's what this is. Zach, this is where we are. This is. I have to say, the people who are out there, you might be like, "What is going on today at the Buff?" And the answer is, you know what the answer is, Zach? It's morning. All right, we are recording, actually doing an early morning recording of this second piece of Benedict Arnold, and normally we do it. We do afternoons and evenings, and maybe that's the whole thing.
Maybe you have too much energy in the mornings.
All right, so the last time we left our feathered friends,
we left our hero George Washington and the Continental Army, and then there was this guy named Benedict Arnold. Something like that. I don't know. Never heard that name before. And he was up to some nefarious things, I believe, is where we last left him.
Yeah, shenanigans. He had this reset the stage. Washington, 1780. They're fighting the war. It's not going really well. There's some espionage going on around. Washington has set up a spy ring that sends messages all around the planet before it comes back to him in New Jersey. All right. And Benedict Arnold, who is an American general, was married to Peggy Shippen, who was from a Loyalist family. And she had been buddy-buddy with a guy named John Andre, who was a British officer when he was in Philadelphia. So the British officer left Philadelphia. He went to New York. Peggy married Benedict Arnold. And now there's this kind of conflict of interest thing. And Benedict Arnold is thinking of bailing out on the Americans and joining the British side because he wants some more accolades.
Yeah, I mean, additionally, like, it's not just because he married Peggy. Like, he was upset with his role in their army. He was upset that, like, there's this ego thing going on. And maybe I'm going to dive into this just for a little bit, and we can explore this topic at a later date. But this weekend and on Friday a little bit with multiple different friends, I had conversations about ego and leadership and things like that. And the biggest thing that we took away was that if you're a leader, you can't have an ego. People around you can, but you can't, because then you're being controlled by something else, and then your goals and visions aren't aligned with the rest of the team. And Benedict Arnold's goals and visions weren't aligned with the rest of the team. team in this case being the Continental Army, and overthrowing the British rule of the colonies. Instead, well, he just wanted to win trophies and hang out in New York and think he was better than people. So he decided to set up meetings with Andre and then find a way that he could work for the British while still being a general for the colonies.
Yeah, and it's interesting because what happens in 1780, all right, he gets, these guys all have expense reports that they submit, right? And you have to buy whatever you have to buy and do things. And he had done some campaigns into Quebec and stuff a long time ago. And those bills had come due, and he had submitted them to Congress for payment. And they were like, yeah, we don't have any receipt. Keep your receipts, Zach. All right. He didn't have receipts. He didn't have any accounting for that stuff. And they were like, dude, we can't pay you for these expenses because you don't have any documentation. You're responsible for these. And they came out to over £1,000 that Benedict Arnold was going to have to pay. So he's being slighted from a military point of view. And now he's been audited and he's been found financially liable for this stuff. All right. So he is disgruntled and financially at risk. And that increased the conversations between him and General Clinton through Peggy Shipman and John Andre. So the cards have now been,
dealt, and he dives into it. Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that Benedict Arnold married Peggy influenced a lot of what is to come in the later years of Benedict Arnold's life. But that does not take away the fact that he felt slighted and everything else, from the Continental Army to the Continental Congress to the way other military leaders thought about him. Washington respected him, but he thought that Washington betrayed him. So it's just, he has no good relationships with anybody except for his wife, and his wife is allowing him to have this opportunity to meet with a British sympathizer to allow him to be a traitor to the now bulging United States.
Yeah, so we're up and coming. He is looking like he wants to get on the other side. And General Clinton, the British General Clinton, he wanted the Hudson Valley north of New York City. All right, New York City was a very important piece of real estate. The Hudson River runs from the north to the south, from Albany down there to New York, and along the way was West Point. All right, West Point is on the river, 55 miles north of Manhattan. So Benedict Arnold sought command of West Point so he could have it and then lose it to the British. All right, that was his big plan. All right, he thought if he could get command of West Point, then he could essentially sell West Point to Clinton, and Clinton would pay handsomely. So in July of 1780, Benedict Arnold makes his first offer. He makes an offer to Clinton for West Point in exchange for £10,000. And then after some going back and forth with some letters and stuff, he goes, you know what? £20,000. All right. You give me £20,000 and I will come to the other side and I will give you West Point. The British would have West Point for the low price of $10,000. So the idea of sending money to the other country to try to get in, I mean, that's as old, Zach, that's as old as the hills.
Yeah. I mean, like at the same time, Benedict Arnold, he was supplying Clinton and a bunch of other British generals with information about American troop movements, so that they understood like where people were going, what was going on. Additionally, he was vying for that position as commander at West Point. So It wasn't like he's like, oh, I can tell you where things are at. No, he was going to be in charge there, and he was going to purposely lose. He was going to throw the game.
Yep.
And allow the British to come in and take control.
So this is why you're not allowed to bet on your own military battles, right, Zach? Because you...
Yes. Right. This is why you're not allowed to bet on the own games you're playing, and this is why Congress isn't allowed to trade... Oh, wait, hang on.
All right, well, back to that. Okay, so in August of 1780, because this is summer months going by, in August, Washington actually puts Arnold in charge of West Point. Yeah. All right. So Benedict Arnold, he was supposed to go do this other battle, and he was like, "No, my leg." Remember, his leg got wounded. He was like, "I can't. My leg is bad." And he was like, "Okay, you can be in charge of West Point." All right. So Washington puts him up there, and immediately Benedict Arnold starts supplying the fort so that when the British came, they would get all sorts of stuff, right? Cannon and horses and I don't know,
Ammo,
plates.
supplies, food, whatever they needed.
Yeah, plates, knives, and forks. Okay, so he wanted to make sure that the Patriot defenses would fail, and he wanted to make sure that the British had a good plan for getting in there because he didn't want to get shot, right? And he wanted, he probably didn't want to lose all the American soldiers. That would be, he probably had a little bit of a heart. So meanwhile, at a party, right in New York, John Andre's there, and he lets drop at one of these parties that he is going north for a few days. All right. And most people go like, "Oh, all right, you're going north for a few days." But there was the female spy 355, appears to have been in attendance at this party. And she overhears that and she thinks, this is the kind of thing that the spy ring ought to know. So she gives that information to Townsend, who gives it to Woodall, who gives it to Talmadge. I forget the exact guys. That information goes all the way around, and that is now information in the spy ring, okay? And that's information that got passed along. So the plan got all set up. What was going to happen is John Andre was going to go north to meet Benedict Arnold to congeal the plans that they had, okay? Arnold told one of the outposts on the Hudson River. Okay, so remember, at the south is New York. It's run by the British. 55 miles north is Patriot territory, is American territory, run by the Continentals. Right? But there's an outpost along the river, and Benedict Arnold tells this outpost that there's this businessman named John Anderson who's going to be coming up the Hudson to visit him to talk about business stuff that they have to do to, I don't know, get more horses or whatever it was, right? And they should let him through, okay? And then Benedict Arnold and John Andre were going to make plans, and they're going to get everything coordinated during this meeting, okay? So meanwhile, the spy ring in Manhattan says, like, there's a lot of stuff going on here all of a sudden, okay? We're in late summer, things are there's a lot of movements of troops, people going back and forth in Setauket out in the Sound, right? No one really knew what was going on, but everybody felt there was something big coming, right? September 10th, right? Remember, we were in August when he gets command. September 10th, Benedict Arnold goes downriver to meet this merchant, or using finger quotes here, John Anderson, who's really John Andre, right? Right. And the next day, September 11th, he gets to Dobbs Ferry. And you can see all these places, Zach. This is really incredible. You can pull out your map of New York and the Hudson Valley, and there's Dobbs Ferry right there along the river. But John Andre never showed up.
He doesn't show up. There's confusion coming on. Like you mentioned earlier, the spy ring knew something was up with Benedict Arnold. Like, there's a lot of moving pieces now. And in today's society, things would move very quickly. But in 1780, things move not as quickly, but you could still do the things to prevent and thwart Benedict Arnold's plan to lose West Point.
Yeah, they would have seen this immediately with today's intelligence things, but they didn't back then because the timing of this just gets remarkable. Okay, so 8 days later, September 19th, John Andre goes north further up the river, all right? And he actually gets to meet with Arnold, okay? And they stay the night at a local house, all right? So there were places, like, you couldn't just meet at the Best Western Econo Lodge and then drive back to your house. I mean, you had to meet at a place and stay, and there was like you'd meet at the tavern and you could stay upstairs, or somebody had a house nearby and you'd go find them. But the distances were really tight and small, and the timing was really, really, really slow. So they stay the night at this house because they figure if they try to go back up and down the river again, it's going to be bad because there are British patrols going up and down and American patrols going up and down, trying to figure out the balance of who owns what where on the river. Okay, so the next day, they figure they can't take the boat to get these guys back. So they go out riding, right? They get horses, and Benedict Arnold and John Andre are riding. Okay, and Benedict Arnold says, I'm going to go back to West Point. You got the plans. Benedict Arnold, or John Andre says, yep, I got the plans. John Andre starts going back down towards White Plains, which is an area just north of New York City, with two Americans that are in charge of his security. Okay, because he is John Anderson. He's not John Andre. Okay, so, and they were unaware that they were carrying this British spy through the heart of Patriot territory. Okay, so when they get to the Croton River, it's a little tributary that comes from the east into the Hudson. John Andre goes, "This is good, gentlemen. Thank you very much. You go on your way. I'll ride on alone." And they were like, "Well, good luck, man." And he rides on. All right, so he's riding along by himself with plans in his pocket. Or actually, they're in his socks. Okay, he's riding along, and these three guards stop him. Okay, and John Andre has a pass from Benedict Arnold. He's got like a note. It's like a note from your mother or from the principal just to be in the hallway, right? And it says, "Let this guy pass because he's my buddy. Sincerely, Benedict Arnold." Okay, so they get to him. He gets to the security guys, right? And they were like, "This guy's a British officer, but he's got a pass from Benedict Arnold. Let's search him." So they're like, "Okay, we'll search him." And no, this was a little tricky because this guy's a British officer, but he has a pass. And there's this idea that everybody is supposed to be noble. We talked about this, right? Spies were a thing that nobody wanted to be. So actually finding a spy would be a really rare thing. Right?
Yeah. I mean, additionally, military generals on opposing sides, especially 1780, met with each other. That was not uncommon for there to be some type of relationship between the two. The fact that he's out in the middle of nowhere, New York, makes it a little more interesting, but not in a good way. Well, if you get captured or stopped by the wrong people or the right people, depending on who you are.
Well, and these are just guys who are supposed to be guarding the road. You guys go up there, guard the road. If everybody comes by, stop them, find out what they're doing.
You guys go guard the road and make sure he doesn't leave.
That's right. It's like, okay, so John Andre's riding along. He gets stopped by the guards, and they search his clothes. They find nothing. They search his boots. They find nothing. But then one guy notices there's a little bulge in his sock. And he says, "What's in your sock?" Bingo. Okay, these are the plans that John Andre and Benedict Arnold had put together for turning over West Point. Okay, they were like, "Oh, this guy's a spy," so they kept him. Okay, and he goes, "Well, what do you need to let me go free?" And he offers them like all sorts of like money and fame and wealth and all sorts of things they get offered. And they were like, no, we are taking you in. So they take him to this guy named John Jameson, right? And they said, "We found this guy. We think he's a spy. He's got a pass from Benedict Arnold, but he's a British officer. And we found these plans for turning over West Point. Something is amok." Okay. So Jameson doesn't really know what to do because he doesn't want to tick off Benedict Arnold because he's a superior officer. But on the other hand, he's got he's got plans for turning over West Point. So he takes the plans. He says, "You know what? Send these to General Washington and see what he thinks." Okay, so keep in mind where they are. Okay, they're
in the middle of nowhere, New York.
Yeah, yes. Well, they're along kind of the border between New York and Connecticut, off the east side of the Hudson River at the Croton
They're still
River.
in the middle of nowhere.
But it is, right, it's the wilderness because it's 1780, okay? So, meanwhile, okay, so at this place where Jameson it's called the camp at Newcastle, okay? It just happened to be that they came to a place where there was a guy from the spy ring was there, one of the last guys who worked with Washington, and that's Benjamin Talmadge. Okay, and he worked with Washington, and his job was to read the incoming correspondence and decide what was worth it and what wasn't. So he's reading this stuff, okay, and he's reviewing all the correspondence. And in it, he finds a note from Benedict Arnold that says, "When John Anderson comes up, let him pass to me." And Talmadge goes, "Oh, wait a minute. We got all this stuff going on, troop movements in New York and out on Long Island. We got Benedict Arnold acting like a real nut job, going up and down the river, meeting people and setting up meetings, right? And we get reports from New York City. This is not good." So he comes out of the camp, out of the tent. He goes to Jameson. "Where's the prisoner? I got to talk to him." And Jameson says, "Oh, I sent him back to West Point. He wanted to go see Benedict Arnold, so I sent him back up there. Jameson let him leave.
Yep.
Okay. He lets him leave to go back to Benedict Arnold up at West Point. And Talmadge says, wait a minute. Look, here's the deal. And he lays out the stuff for him. And but Jameson says, no, I had to let him go. I had to, because the general said, and I'm just a guy. I'm just, what am I going to do? Yeah. How can I make that decision? All right. So meanwhile, Benedict Arnold is preparing to have John Andre come back up there. Okay. Although he doesn't even know that. Okay. John Andre's snuck his way out, but he's being escorted up. And Jameson says, we shouldn't have done that. So they send a rider back up there to try to catch John Andre going back to West Point. Okay.
Yep. Additionally, they're trying to let Arnold know that Andre got captured and arrested, so he gets all confused and something like they're trying to catch people in the act with this going on now too, because now they have to move really fast.
Yeah, so there are guys like riding horses like at top speed all over the Hudson Valley here at this in September of 1780. Meanwhile, George Washington had been out in Connecticut reviewing troops with the French. Remember the French? They had come to help us out. And he was going to go to West Point to go see his buddy Benedict and see, hey, how's it going? Let's review the troops. Let's see what's going on. So Benedict's thinking, holy cow, we could have a situation where the commanding general of the Continental Army is at West Point when the British, we could turn over West Point, get 20,000 pounds, and get Washington captured.
Well, he gets 20,000 pounds, no one else, but...
Right. So he was like, this could be awesome if Washington's here on the right time. But nobody really knew when he was coming, okay? So Washington is, meanwhile, he's riding with whom, Zach? Alexander Hamilton, all right? The guy who wrote the musical, right?
Yes.
So he is riding with Alexander, who is his like aide-de-camp, or he's like his top guy. And they are like 15 miles out from West Point. And Washington says, Alex, you ride ahead. Tell him I'm on my way. Take the stuff there. Tell Benedict when I get there, I would like to break fast with him. Make me breakfast, right?
Yeah.
Right? Just like the chorus song, right? Make me breakfast. All right. So he says, I want you to make me breakfast, and then we'll tour the fort, and we'll see how things are going. Okay. So Alexander Hamilton arrives. All right. Benedict Arnold's not there. All right. He had told his guys, he was standing there, and this rider had come up and said, here's a note for you, sir. And Benedict Arnold sees the note. His wife is there. His kid is there. And Benedict Arnold says, I need to go check on something. All right, and Benedict Arnold hightails it out of there. Okay, so Alexander Hamilton shows up. Benedict Arnold is gone because he had gotten the letter from Colonel Jameson, and he had bolted. And then Washington shows up. I mean, the confluence of all these people here at the same time is remarkable. All right. So meanwhile, John Andre is going back down to Newcastle. I mean, this is like a sitcom, Zach. And Washington gets there.
You can't write this stuff.
No, you can't write it. And he says, Washington gets there, and he was like, "Where's my commanding general?" Because he's not there.
Commanding general.
Yeah, he had to go check on a thing. All right. So 2 hours later, this other guy comes up from Newcastle that says, "Wait a minute, we got the spy. Benedict Arnold is going to sell out West Point." And they're like, dude, get on a horse, chase him down. Okay. So the riders go looking for Benedict Arnold, and the package that had arrived for Washington was the plans that they had pulled from John Andre's boot, from his sock.
Yeah.
Okay. So Alexander Hamilton chases Benedict Arnold across the Hudson Valley. Okay, but can't reach him in time before he escapes. So Benedict Arnold escapes down far enough downriver, because he tells these two, he's a general. He was like, I really need to get downriver to go meet up with so-and-so. But meanwhile, he gets there. They go to a British boat, and
But Arnold, on his escape route, he met up with a bargeman to row him down to New York to get there faster, so he could get like safe passage on a British occupied.
So they get there, and the bargeman who's rowing him down there was like, all right, here we are, sir. It's like, yes, you are now a prisoner of the British Navy. And you're like, what the hell is going on here? I mean, it was zany. Like, if you had the Three Stooges, you could actually make this a comedy. But this, like, the war hung in the balance here, Zach, with all of this spy stuff and guys riding back and forth, and John Andre being John Anderson, and they're guys staying in the houses, and Alexander Hamilton writing a musical on the back of a horse. I mean, this just got crazy. Okay. So,
and then also at the same time, John Andre is still a prisoner of the American military at the time.
Yeah, because he's at Newcastle, and
yeah, so they re-got him because he went to go up and hang out with Arnold and take over West Point, but he didn't get to that because they were sending guys to chase him down. So
yeah,
so Arnold is safely with the British, and Andre is now safely with in the hands of the Americans, and Washington is now like, okay, what just happened in the course of these 5 minutes where I left you guys alone for 5 minutes, and this is what happens.
Breakfast. My goal was French toast and waffles. All right, and I get stuck with now I have no commander at West Point. This guy has bailed. I got John Andre. What am I going to do? Okay. Meanwhile, there's this Peggy Shippens there with the baby, and Washington's like, "Who are you?" She was like, "I'm Benedict Arnold's wife," and they're like, "Oh, geez, what are we going to do with you?" All right, so the baby was Edward. In case you care, Zach, Edward Arnold, Eddie Arnold, not the Eddie Arnold from Green Acres from the '50s TV show, but this is Eddie Arnold, Benedict Arnold's son from Peggy Shipman. Okay, and Benedict Arnold left Peggy and the baby at West Point because he knew that Washington would treat them well.
Yes,
and that's exactly what he did.
Additionally, Benedict Arnold wrote a letter to Washington saying, "Hey, can you give Peggy safe passage back to her family, and then we'll just take." And Washington's, because he's George Washington, he said, "Sure."
Right, and that's the kind of man. Okay, so that's the kind of man George. All of his other, everybody's got flaws. Deep down, George Washington is a good guy. All right, and meanwhile, Talmadge, the guy who deciphered what was going on, he takes John Andre back to Connecticut, and he was found. They found him to be just this wonderful guy. He was smart. He was witty. The girls loved him because he was good looking. He knew everything. He was a great conversationalist at parties, and he was a great guy. Everybody loved John Andre, and everybody hated Benedict Arnold. So Washington was like, you know what? We'll just do it. Clinton, hey, let's do a trade. We'll give you John Andre. You give us
first round pick.
Yeah, first round pick and $20,000, and we'd like Bill Belichick. All right, so we would like all those things. And Clinton says, no, we are keeping Benedict Arnold. You can have John Andre. All right, so Washington's kind of like, now what am I going to do with this guy? Because he's a great strategist. He's a good man, but he's a spy, and we are a young nation, and we cannot be thought to be anything other than what other nations are. And the way you have to demonstrate that is you have to demonstrate you are playing by the same rule book. So John Andre was tried and convicted, and on October 2nd of 1780, John Andre was hanged at Tappan, New York, right? Just a week after his capture, right? And during that week, apparently everybody loved him. He'd be sitting around the campfires, tending camp, chatting with the patriots. He was pleasant. He was well-mannered. He was respectful.
He was everything you wanted Benedict Arnold to be.
That's right. So if you and there's a very famous drawing, Zach. I remember this from when I was a little kid. There's a drawing. And not only that, he was an artist. Okay, so he drew a very famous self-portrait, and that portrait is in the book here. If you get the book, it's in one of these pages of these little drawings. And I saw this picture, Zach, when I was a little kid in one of the books I read. Have you seen this picture of John Andre? You've seen that one?
Probably.
Right. So he sketched that on the back of a letter that he was writing to George Washington. Is that right? He just a sketch of him sitting there at a little table. Beautiful drawing, Zach. And they hanged him because he was a spy.
Yeah.
All right. And meanwhile, Benedict Arnold,
he's hanging out in New York. So Washington's like, okay, let's go after Benedict Arnold. So he takes his troops down, and they infiltrate into New York City. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on who you are in the situation, Arnold is able to escape capture, and he makes his way down into Virginia.
Right, and then he gets some commands, all right? So he's involved in a number of battles over the next year or so. Right? Remember, Yorktown was okay. This is Zach. We had this wrong in the first half of the first episode. I said Treaty of Paris was 1781. Treaty of Paris was 1783. The siege and Battle of Yorktown was 1781, and that pretty much ended the war. But between 1780, late fall of 1780, and the fall of Yorktown, Benedict. Why do I say Benjamin?
Benjamin
Right?
Button.
Benjamin Button Franklin, or Benedict Arnold, got a number of commands both in the South there and then also up in Connecticut. And, Zach, they say his troops hated him. They had no respect for the man because how could they respect a guy that they knew has a history of bailing out? All right. That's like the guy who's a cheater on his wife and then he gets with the new girl and he's like, I won't cheat on you. And she's like, well, you cheated on her to get to me. So why would it? So that's how Benedict Arnold is like that guy. He's like that guy. So Washington did treat Peggy and Edward very well. He returned them to Benedict Arnold. And Arnold, after the war, he went to England for a while. And then he moved to Canada and set up like a shop doing
Business
Benedict Arnold business. Probably helping you cheat on your wife or something, right? And then he eventually went back to England, and he died in England in the early 1801, and that's Benedict Arnold, and that's why he is like the man Americans love to hate. At West Point,
a lot of reasons to.
At West Point, there's a list of all the commanders that have ever been at West Point. All right, and there's for his time when he was there, whenever it was, August and September of 1780, it just says something like commanding general. It doesn't even list his name. It just says that there was somebody there who took a spot. But his great grandfather was like a super duper guy in some of the early colonies. So the Arnolds go way, way, way back in American history, and for him to bail out because of want of glory and because of financial straits, I guess I'll say this: it's not worth it. It's not worth it. He goes down in history as one of the most hated men in the Americas, and the British didn't really like him that much either. So,
yeah, I mean, he made a bunch of dumb decisions that were motivated by ego.
Yeah,
that it's going to be the be all end all of everything that you do. Like, if you can't control that, if you can't get yourself in line and your visions aligned with the team, the group, whatever you're doing, you are going to shoot yourself in the foot. Well, he almost did that, and then it's not going to end well for you. He wanted glory, power, and fame, and if that's his intentions and they were true, then so be it. But those are not intentions that align with what the American Continental Army and Congress was about. He was fighting a losing cause, regardless of what side he was on. Additionally, he had 5 children with Peggy Shippen, and 4 of them ended up being officers in the British Army in various different ways, including one that served in India with the Bengal Army. But that's a different story for a different day. But there is, history that gets embedded throughout that he's disconnected to some weird things at times.
Yeah, it is a wonderful. It's a great story about people having. We talk a lot about, like we mentioned before, about divine providence and things happen to work out well. Now, you could make the argument that we wouldn't really know that Benedict Arnold was a bad guy had the British won the war. We would think that he was one of the guys who actually decided to fight those bastard patriots. I think there's
an argument to be made that the colonies would eventually become free of British rule. It's just, what would we think of what we now refer to as the Revolutionary War, and what were those events?
Well, that was the Civil War, right? I mean, the American Civil War was a revolutionary war by a country and it failed. All right, so they declared themselves free and independent states. Lincoln said, "No, that's not how we do things here," and on we go. So it's a you have to know these stories. There is so much history, and it is so rich. But there are themes, Zach, that are consistent throughout history. All right, All right, never get involved in a land war in Asia. We learned that with Magellan, right? And don't do things for love of money. It's not going to get you where you need to go.
I thought you were going to mention the quote from Princess Bride there, but
which one was that?
The Sicilian, and then the drinking thing with.
Well, that's never get involved in the land war in Asia. I mean, those never go up against the Sicilian when death is on the line.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah.
Okay.
But additionally, I will mention this also about Benedict Arnold. He was exiled in England at the end of his life. So the constant themes of his life were constant. He just, he had attempts and failed attempts to, take power positions in the government with the British East India Trading Company. Like, he just wanted money, glory, power, and fame. And I've said it many times on this podcast before. I don't have much money, power, glory, or fame. I quite like that the world doesn't know my name. I do the things I do for the people in my life that make it so special. That's why I do it. And if that's not a reason for doing something, then maybe you need to have some new reasons.
Well, that's, they say he was searching for power, right, and glory. And it seems to me that the only people that should not get power and glory are the people who want power and glory. And the only people who should get power and glory are the people who don't want it, right? The only people fit to rule are the people who don't want it. And that's another thing that comes back to General Washington, all right? His decision to step down, they wanted him to be king, Zach. They said, you can be king. Your family will be set for life. And he was like, no, freedom matters more than this. Now, we can talk. I will certainly entertain, maybe on another date, the issues with George Washington and slavery. Right? How can a man, here's a question, how can a man who believes so fully in the freedom of man hold slaves? How is that possible? And we can have that discussion. If you would like, you can say General Washington was a terrible human being because he did that. Or you can appreciate that George Washington lived in a time where that was rampant. All right? And it took him his entire life to break free of the miasma that overwhelmed that society that said it was okay for people to own each other.
Additionally, Washington lived in Virginia, and Virginia was a heavy plantation and slave state. Additionally, this is a very little known fact, Virginia had multiple things sent to their Congress of outlawing slavery before 1812. There were multiple plans, and none of them got approved because it was needed for the economy, be as that may. Eventually, people stopped owning slaves. Yeah, people are terrible people at times, and that's sometimes just how humans are. But every once in a while, there are people like George Washington who come around. There are people who come around who make life worthwhile, and they show you that maybe there's a better way to do things. There's a simpler way to do things, and it's okay. And sometimes that's what you need. I'm going to say one last note. Our good friend Andre, he was celebrated throughout British military patriotism, and he is still celebrated to this day. So two very different people in the story, Benedict Arnold and our good friend Andre, who are celebrated for completely different reasons and because of their personalities reflecting of who they are and what they sought.
Yeah, it's a like all these stories, when you dig into them, they become phenomenally wonderful. Brian Kilmeade and Dan Yeager, George Washington's Secret Six, the spy ring that saved the American Revolution. Someday when we have a video version of this podcast, we'll hold up the book and I'll show it to you just like I'm doing right now, Zach. But this is phenomenal. I suggest you read it. This always happens to me, Zach. I get a book when I'm on a trip, and it turns out that the book relates to the trip. So I was actually reading this one time when we were flying in and out of New York and going to visit Harry at West Point. And to read, because I didn't really know that. I knew Benedict Arnold was a guy. I knew John Endra was a guy. I hadn't realized that they were going to turn over West Point to the British. That would have completely changed everything. That was a monumental feat of intelligence, is to stop that. And the secret spy ring did that. So if you are a lover of history, you've got to read this. It's not an easy read. A lot of different people going different places, doing things. Have a map with you, unless you were from Long Island, Jenny. Then
called out.
Wow. She is called out. That's right. We're going to come out, Jenny. You're going to take us to Setauket, and then we're going to go up to Wisconsin. We're going to sail the boat with Craig. All right. So, but it's it's a wonderful story. I encourage you to do it and learn a little bit more about the world that is around you.
Yeah, I can't argue with that at all. Understand how things came and wore and went and why is always important in understanding human history and how we get to where we are today. I can't emphasize that enough. Maybe it's because I have a history degree, but I might be biased here. Who knows? But until next time, I want to thank you all for listening. I want to go remind you to go seek the good, be the good, and spread the good. Enjoy the adventure of life.